So next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer? Let's hear it. And it's the dumbest bill in America, and it is an all-electric building act. Yes, it's called the All-Electric Building Act. It's not just in New York State, it's also in New York City. The New York State law, of course, would apply statewide. The New York City law, they're trying to pass it as well, even faster, and it looks like they're going to. And its purpose, the purpose of the bill is to do what? To ban the use of natural gas on new construction and on building renovations. It's the All-Electric Building Act. So it's a ban on natural gas. Can you imagine in a city like New York, the country's largest city? That's so stupid. So here are the losers who are outside in New York City with one of the city council women. And you should see them. They're holding these signs, and a couple of them are holding, different kinds of, I guess, looks like they're in a cemetery, like headstones because of these people, this is their future if they ever get in charge. Unfortunately, they are in charge in New York City. Well, to hear them is to understand them. We have a short clip on this, and here it is.
Gas free. NYC. Gas free. NYC. Gas free.
NYC. Gas free. NYC. I mean, it's like there's so much energy there. And yet this bill is going to pass in New York City, and it is probably going to pass in New York State. So Senate Bill S6843A in the state of New York, sponsored by Brian Kavanaugh, enacts the All-Electric Building Act, provides that no city, town, or village shall issue a permit for the construction of new buildings that are not an all-electric building if the initial application for a permit was submitted after December 31, 2023. So in other words, if you're going to build a new building, or if you're going to pull a building permit for construction to renovate a building in New York State, you have to use electricity only. So if you're trying to heat the building and it gets really cold in upstate New York, and it certainly gets very cold in New York City in the wintertime, you have to heat it with electricity. Imagine not just the cost, podcast listeners, imagine how stupid this is. Okay, because I know what you're thinking. Oh, well, it's not a big deal. We'll just have, the power plants just generate a lot more electricity, and then the power bills will go up more, and that's the worst case thing, right? Just more expensive electricity bills. That's only part of it. Because remember, this bill works very closely with other bills that have been passed in New York State, namely mandating that you have to use solar or wind, that they have to get rid of any kind of power plant over the next 5, 10, 15, 25 years because of climate change, any power plant that uses oil, natural gas, or coal. So then you ask the question, in New York City, for example, if you have to use only electricity to heat your building and not natural gas or oil, then how will you get sufficient electricity? Where will you get sufficient electricity, since the state is also trying to ban, and will successfully eventually, any kind of natural gas power plant? Well, they're going to get it from, you got it, they're going to get it from solar and wind, which we're going to get to in a minute. We're going to talk about that in a minute because there are a couple of really funny articles about this. And it tells you the timing of these articles that New York State and New York City are trying to pass this ban on natural gas. So in Bloomberg Business, New York City poised to ban gas in new buildings, buoying electrification. Forbidding natural gas hookups in new buildings aims for a greener city. The movement to banish natural gas from U.S. homes and buildings is about to claim its biggest surprise yet. New York City. Next week, city council members are expected to vote to ban gas hookups in new buildings as a way to fight both air pollution and climate change. Gone will be gas furnaces, water heaters, and the blue flame stovetops beloved by cooks and realtors alike in the city of 8 million people. New buildings, smaller than 7 stories, must rely solely on electricity, starting at the end of 2023, while larger buildings will have an extra 4 years to comply. The move will bring fresh momentum to an effort to rid new construction of the fossil fuel, which has already seen some success along the West Coast in cities including San Francisco, where they have rolling blackouts. And while the fossil fuel industry remains bitterly opposed, casting the bans as a misguided war on gas, some climate activists and civic officials say cities aiming to slash their greenhouse gas emissions may have little choice but to follow along. Buildings account for 68% of New York City's greenhouse gas emissions, and most of that's from natural gas. Don't believe that for a minute. There's no real way to hit the city's climate goals if you're still burning fossil fuels inside buildings, said Russell Unger, who leads the building's electrification initiative at the RMI Energy think tank. The math just doesn't add up. So this article goes on and on and on about how they're going to power New York State and New York City. And then simultaneously with this article and a number of other articles coming out about this stupid bill in New York State and a mirrored bill in the city of New York about how they want to ban natural gas and you must only use electricity to heat your buildings. No other kind of oil or natural gas can be used. Well, at the same time those bills came out, you had the articles explaining them, and you have a couple of articles that have come out about solar power. So here's one. The upstate land grab behind the solar power boom. The future of American energy lies in a 30-acre field at the base of the Finger Lakes, tucked between rolling hills and 2-lane roads. It contains 23,000 solar panels, including and producing 9 million kilowatt hours of electricity each year, enough to power 840 average American homes. So think about this, folks. It's 30 acres, and those 30 acres with 23,000 solar panels is only going to power 840 average-sized American homes. So that would mean in New York State, in order for you to power the state and all of the cities in New York, including New York City, you're going to need what? You're going to need to cover every square inch of upstate New York with solar panels. In other words, no more beautiful rolling fields. No, just all you're going to see is these really ugly solar panels. Wonder what that's going to do to habitats. Wonder what that's going to do to, like all the wildlife. Wonder what that's going to do to, the farmers and the people that actually grow things. Wonder what that's going to do to the view shed. Well, they don't really care because there's an upstate land grab for solar panel farms, not because of the fact that they make sense, but because of government and government mandates. And this bill is just another one, right? Everything has to be electric. There can't be any natural gas. So then there's another article in USA Today, fact check. Foss claim that replacing cornfields with solar panels exacerbates climate change. And so this article goes on and says, well, it's not a threat to scenery and to livelihoods it's not a threat, of course, to cover millions of acres with solar panels. It's not a threat to the wildlife. It's not a threat to farmers. I mean, who are these people? How stupid are they? I mean, the idea that by covering the ground with concrete and steel and the solar panels, the silicon that covers them, and doing that, and somehow you're not impacting the land. I mean, because it's generating electricity, you also have to surround it with a fence. It needs to be fenced in because you don't want kids going into that once cornfield area where you have solar panels and touching stuff because they'll be electrocuted. or worse, Yet these are the articles that are coming out. And then there's another article, and it's in Lifehacker, and it's how to get your solar panels ready for winter. And it shows a house with solar panels on the roof, and the solar panels are covered with ice and snow. And so, as you might imagine, in New York State, you have a lot of ice and you have a lot of snow. So you can cover the whole darn state with solar panels, but if you have a really big snowstorm or ice storm, those solar panels are not going to be working very well, if at all. And yet, these idiots in New York State have passed and intend to pass very shortly the All-Electric Building Act, which requires you to buy only electricity from solar farms and from wind farms, which destroy the countryside, destroy wildlife, destroy the beauty of the countryside, just because these climate change nuts have hijacked the state legislature, and they've hijacked New York City. Remember, these are the same people in New York City who have canceled Thomas Jefferson and removed his statue. So good luck getting enough electricity in New York City when this bill finally is implemented, and you're unlucky enough to be in a brand new building in New York City, which has got to be electrified only by solar panels, and then you have a major snowstorm in New York State, and you're like, well, where am I going to get the electricity? Well, sorry, sir, we have an outage because of snow. I'm sorry about that, man. Sorry that happened. And that's the dumbest bill in America, the All-Electric Building Act. And that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Parler, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.